Computer. Hello, welcome everyone to another Climate Emergency Centre network talk. We have the amazing, fantastic, legendary Nana's Tina Louise here, who's been absolutely incredible in the anti-fracking campaigns and campaigning on many different issues over a lot of time. And she's going to be speaking about some of the learnings from the anti-fracking campaigns and camps that a lot of us helped and supported and visited, and also about the bigger picture of the climate and ecological bill and actually changing the system, which is what we really need to see. So without too much further ado, over to Tina.
Thanks so much, Felix. I hate intros like that. You have to live up to something then. And if we're going on like naming people, I'm going with what Henry is. If he's tall Henry, I'm short Tina. So that would seem to work out as a better intro. Anyway, so it's really a delight to be here because any room with people who do what you people do or who have an interest in what you have is the right room to be in for me. And one of the parts I wanted to talk about tonight was exactly that, that it doesn't matter our banner, our group, our label, but we're all looking to fix the system and fix the world. So that makes us one group, and that would probably make us the largest group in the world, I would think, if we could all, not be so differentiated by our labels. So I'll start at the beginning. 2011, I went and joined Occupy and met people like Phoenix for the first time in my life. So, as a fully grown woman who'd not done any activism, I had no idea how to find my place within it. And I was quite scared, nervous, uncomfortable, didn't really know what I was walking into. But once I'd walked into it, I realized I couldn't walk back out again. I always call it the sheer drop of activism because once you're in the door and you start realizing what's been done and how much there is to do, there's no leaving, there's no exit door. And, if there are people you love for generations younger than yourself, then their face is on every exit door anyway, so you can't leave. I used to give a talk in places that had a fracking license, and I used to call it the unwelcome gift of truth because it really is an unwelcome gift because it's going to completely change your life. Nothing will ever be the same again. And I think that I learned so much at Occupy that whilst I was there, and I was there for half of most weeks during the occupation, because I ended up just taking a tent and not being home very much, I realized that that when I did come home, there was a leaflet explaining that there was this fantastic new industry and it was going to extract natural gas and it was going to create loads of jobs. Now, Blackpool, where I live, is got some of the poorest wards in the country. I mean, the age of like death in this area is 64 for men. Die before they even get the chance to reach retirement and get a pension. Like, this is a real poverty place. So dangling that in front of people in need made it very much that the town wanted it, or at least they'd been convinced that they did. And I didn't know not to. But I was fresh back from Occupy. I kind of felt like I knew how to ask the right questions and what to do if I didn't find the right answers. So I did, and I found out how incredibly devastatingly bad fracking was in other places in Australia, America, Canada, and then joined up with a little local group that had set up called Residents Action on Fracking. They weren't against it. No one knew to be against it. We didn't know enough to be, but we wanted to have the opportunity to find out more. So we attended all the public meetings put on by the fracking company. And honestly, you could just see through the lies. You knew. And they were giving these fresh-faced young PR guys to speak to who were not engineers or safety experts or experts in anything except PR. So you'd ask questions and they'd say, that's so important, really important. Please, I'm going to write that down and I'm going to get back to you. And I can honestly say in all those years, I never, ever once did anyone get back to me. And I remember crying for the first time about all this in about 2014, because I've been at it since 2011. In 2014, I went to another one of their public meetings somewhere in the country, and it was the same. And I just thought, are you kidding me? This is just on a loop. But then I realized that was the magic, really, because when someone's trying to sell you something, they're going to give you everything that they've got. They're going to tell you it's brilliant, but they've only got so much of that to tell you. And then it goes on to a loop. They can just keep doing the same thing. Whereas for us, we were getting more and more informed. We became such expert researchers. We buddied up with Friends of the Earth and got them to do a lot of the work for us, certainly to give us legal information, information about planning and licenses. And I knew then that, okay, so it made me sad for a minute to think I was stuck in this time warp, but that from that we could grow. And it was 2014 that some of the women who were already fighting against fracking decided we wanted to make a group, occupy a field, to draw attention to just how close the fracking site would be to where a lot of residents live, because we'd been round to the residents and they said, oh no, it's not too near to here, it's quite a way away. And a lot of them were retirement residences. And we wanted to say, like, it's 2 fields on from you. How can you think that's a long way away? So we decided that at 5 o'clock in the morning, we'd take 26 grandmas, throw ourselves over a fence, occupy the field and hold it for 3 weeks. It was disused as a field. We recce'd it for weeks beforehand. No cows were using it. No one was using it. So we knew it was a clear field. And then, but we had to classify ourselves as A, B, and C grandmas because, as I'd learned from Phoenix, we had to Section 6 it. So you had to have someone who was going to run fast, get the tape round, get the gates locked. And then you had, so those were the A nanas. So they were thrown over sharpish. B nanas walked around after them with the paperwork, putting them on the gates. And C nanas needed assistance getting over the fence. There were so many calls for Nana down and everyone running over to pick up nanas. And then we got settled in by about 5 in the morning, set up our tents, had a cup of tea, called the police, said, by the way, we're here. It's a civil act. And I think it was easier back then. There's been a lot of rules come against us since then. And the police were lovely. And it was so weird because just weeks, like in the months before, when we'd been at a terrible site in Barton Moss in Salford, the police were brutal to our bodies and brutal to us. And yet there we were in these cute little nana tabards, little headscarves. And it was like they couldn't recognize us. It was, oh, what are you doing? It was all really sweet. We realized we could probably use that as older women. And we made that a very big part of what we did. And so in my learnings of what did I learn, being surprising, being unlike what they expect you to be. There are a lot of occasions where the nanas, we would put ourselves on a front line in front of young people or the men because the police were really happy to beat up people who look like Phoenix. But when you're beating up your grandma, it looks really bad in the press, and they dragged Anne once, Anne Power, our eldest grandma, she's 86, and they grabbed her and dragged her from under her arms, 3 cops, one either under each arm and one behind her, and were dragging her across the road. Her shoes, no one had her feet, her shoes were dragged off. Her heels were red raw from being dragged across a dual carriageway. And of course, the young people want to help you, but Anne, like the rest of us, said, don't. We need to show how far they're willing to go. Hitting the young people, the population's been taught to accept that. They're hard activists. But we needed to show that this was more than stopping hooligans, that they were now going to try and stop anyone who just wanted to do what was right for their community. So, and we came up with tactics that were slightly different. You have to, first of all, accept also, I suppose, an action. That, like, we did 1,000 days, for instance, in Preston New Road, just to keep this one fracking site at bay. Obviously, they still built it, but we were there long enough to cripple them financially and reputationally and so on. But obviously, we weren't the only people there. I mean, the anti-fracking movement's huge, and it has many elements, much like how XR got such bad PR. There are elements of the anti-fracking movement that got that too. But you can't critique each other. That's really important. Each person should fight in their own way and use their own tactics. And I think that supporting each other was the most important thing, saying that, not criticizing and saying, oh, you shouldn't do it that way, because there is no right or wrong way to fight. And also it serves your purpose, because if people who are unpredictable, who fight differently to you, appear, the police don't know what to expect and they don't know who to expect it from. So it worked. We didn't all get on all the time. Obviously, I think everyone understands in activism that's a hard ask. But all you can do is mosey up alongside each other, stand shoulder to shoulder, regardless. And the things that did divide us, things like, an election would come along, Brexit came along. We kind of had a pact in Nanas that we didn't talk about anything unless it was fracking. I don't want to know who your God is, or, what you think about football teams or your favorite political party. Because if you got, we used to say it was the red dot. For me, it was, I'm aiming to stop fracking. Nothing will stop me from doing this. And so all of those other things, they're just diversions. They're just diversions. They're going to take your energy and your time, and you just keep plowing on to whatever your personal red dot is.
It's a very good point about, diversity of tactics and staying focused, because there's so many things that they'll try and distract and divide on. Just
Absolutely.
to say, Tina did say along the way, if people do want to ask
Oh,
a
I meant to
question
say
or
it.
give some feedback or something, they can. So either stick your hand up or use the reactions thing down the bottom, raise your hand like that, and we'll come to it when we can.
Yeah, because we're quite a small group. So, I mean, this can be a conversation if we want it to be, but you're best off just jumping in, even if I'm rambling, because I'm
No, it's
hard to
great. It's
stop.
great stuff.
Let me tell you about one of our tactics that worked really well. And it was a tactic we had was obviously blockading gates. So that's really important. So quite often we would spend ages we never knew who they were. We weren't supposed to. So they were the cooks, and they'd cook up like lock-ons and arm tubes. And then people would throw themselves down, get into the arm tubes, and keep the space for days, if they could. Um, we did a week where like, sometimes you only get a few hours, but we did a thing where the police were on, didn't expect anything of the women. They thought we were, and the nanas particularly, that we were no trouble at all. You could just lift us up and move us out of the way whenever you wanted. So there was a day and we sat in front of the gates, and we had 3 knitting circles of 6 in each, and a big basket of wool in the middle. And we're all just knitting away in our little circles. And cops moseyed up and said, "Oh, Tina, just to let you know, truck's coming shortly. We'll get you to move on there." They're like, just carried on ignoring him and doing my knitting, which I don't really knit. I actually fake knit, really. I let other ladies do it for me. But what they didn't see was that we each had woolly handcuffs, and that those woolly handcuffs were woven into the wool in the basket and between all the chairs and around our ankles. So that eventually, while we were knitting, we were becoming the equivalent of what a cat would have created with a load of balls of wool. And then the cops realized that they couldn't get us apart, these 3 knitting circles, that we were stuck, and they would need reinforcements. And this is what led to the one and only Daily Mail headline in our favor, was that they literally sent 5 police vehicles with 10 cops in each, and 50 big burly Lancashire cops piled out of these vans. At this point, all our lovely young people are coming over saying, "We'll protect you." And we were saying, "Go away. This needs to play out. We need to let this play out." And they did. They backed off, but it was, we were close to generations there. No one wanted to see anyone get hurt, and we knew people would be. So we just carried on, and they kept asking us to get up and go. But we termed this period of action "Love and Resistance," and that was really helpful because I was able to feel confident that I was going to resist no matter what. Oh, love and defiance, sorry. And I was going to defy whatever they asked me. And so, but they did. They started plucking out nanas and cutting them out of the wool. And then there was a shot where they had my head back because I had stupidly started to wrap the wool around my neck in a bit of a panic, not realizing that when the chair next to me's lady left, it was going to strangle me in the process. And so they're cutting us all out and dumping us. But then it said, 50 Lancashire cops bear down on 18 knitting OAPs. And that was good. That was what we wanted. And that's what I mean about surprises. You can't just, keep on throwing the same people at it. And I feel bad because our young people shouldn't be having to take the risks and the pain and the hurt and the risk to reputation. I mean, it's really hard for me to get a job, because you just look up my name and it's like, "Oh, that's a troublemaker. I'm just not going to go there." And for our young people, they've got all these years ahead of them. And, this will ruin their reputation. This could make their lives really difficult. So I think it's important that older generations do as much as we can, because we're constantly saying we're doing it for the young, but we shouldn't make the young have to do it. There should be as much as we can that we do that takes some of the heat off them.
I think that's Tina. That's one of the hallmarks of British direct action in some way. I think is the diversity of actions that we've pulled off over the years, and you know, like the road protests, we used to use a lot of like what we call frontline humor, like Monty Python type sketches from up in the tree,
Yeah.
hundreds of police and security, and just mixing the actions up, making them theatrical, making them comedy, diversity of tactics, old and young. You know, that is really, really important on any campaign.
And that's good for you too, though, isn't it? You know, like for us too. The more humor we had, the more dancing, the more music, the more food, the more it made 1,000 days at this place possible.
Yeah, there
Because
was a disco
there had to
dance,
be
wasn't
some
there?
elements of what
The entrance.
we danced every Wednesday. I mean, there were women in our crew who, because Wednesday mornings was the day we danced, who ended up giving up their exercise classes or their yoga. Because what was the point? You just go along to PNR on a Wednesday morning. And we danced like wild women, like stuff you don't expect to be capable of in yourself. You know, I expect to dance at the odd wedding and christening, maybe, you know, and even then I'm a reluctant entry to the dance floor. But give me a road in front of a fracking site. Oh, Jesus, nothing stops you. And you just live it and breathe it, you know. But there's so much gain. You don't ever want to say you love it because I wish we didn't have to. But if you're going to, I would say that the years I spent, particularly at PNR, were really joyous in so many ways. Even on a like -5 in the morning, at 7 in the morning, you turn up and we're all dressed like Michelin men, you know, in our thermals, and one falls down, it takes 5 of you to lift her up because, you know, you're just wrapped up in so much stuff. But yeah, but the comradeship and the joy of being surrounded by people every day who you can't help but respect. You know, in our daily lives, normally we go into work, we make profit for someone or whatever. There's no reward in that like there is in activism. And it truly is a gift. I mean, I'm grateful for it. It's hard and it's changed my life and it's stolen a lot of years. But I think I preferred what it was stolen for, you know? So I've had a change recently in the sense that when we came off the roadside, it was literally a month later that, or 2 months later, that lockdown happens because the fracking is stopped now. And although it's only a moratorium and we'd like a ban, in some ways the moratorium might be keeping us a bit safer because don't know if you've heard of the Energy Charter Treaty, and it gives power to companies to sue governments if they prevent them from taking profit. Like in Slovenia at the moment, they've just banned fracking. And so UK mining companies are now suing the Slovenian government for banning fracking. And it's just crazy. So, and here there is rumor in June there will be a gathering of the fracking companies looking to do something similar with our government. But the thing is, our government was a bit canny with this, with a moratorium, a pause. The proviso with that is, yeah, of course you can frack as soon as you prove it's safe. Now, we know you can never prove that fracking is safe. It's absolutely impossible because it isn't. So, in some ways, I think that's maybe saving us from things like these treaties that would otherwise hurt us. But it struck me after all these years, countless arrests. I still owe Quadrilla £55,000 because we occupied the field. And I'm obviously not paying it because I refused. And then I was in contempt of court for that. But then the
I
judge kind
thought,
of
Tina, I thought there were thousands of Tina Rotheries that day at court.
there were
Which one?
that was the yeah, it was so freaky, you know. At one point I looked down and all these people had a Tina mask on as well. And it was like, oh, this is just overwhelming, you know? And it was overwhelming. And there were 500 people outside the court. But the judge told Quadrilla, you're not going to get what you expect today. Because I was expecting to go to prison. I had my bag packed. I knew I was going to be in contempt of court. But there was no way that even if the money had only been a penny, I wouldn't have done it. I just wouldn't have paid them. It would have been wrong. To me, they were abusing our justice system and using the law like a weapon against me. And because I can't afford to access the law in the way they can, I decided I just wouldn't. I was just going to reject it all. And I wrote to the judge before the court case, so he got it in the morning. And I said, I'm going to be really nervous in your courtroom, and you need to know why I'm doing this. I am in contempt, but not of the court, but I'm in contempt at the abuse of our justice system. And he'd had really bad press stuff all week, you know, the judge. He'd been getting press inquiries. Everyone, it was the only case at the time. And so it was heavy attention. And I don't think he liked it any more than I did. And also he could see through it. that it was clearly an abuse. And, you know, on the award of costs, the 55,000, it says at the top very, very clearly that no one may profit or punish with this cost, you know? So you can't punish me with a ridiculous amount of money being put against me, and you can't profit from it. And clearly they were, you know? So, yeah, so I think he understood my point. And then he told Quadrilla, okay, the way we're doing this is if Miss Rodriguez wins the lottery or inherits land, then you can take her back to court and ask for this money. But if she doesn't, then no, she doesn't owe it at the moment. So I don't play the lottery, and I have no rich relatives. So I think I'm fairly safe. And
That's nice. Nice. There was a lot of Tina Rotheries that day. Years ago, 2011, we had about 20 George Greens arrested saving the tree on George Green. Yeah. Everyone gave their name to George Green.
And that's true solidarity. That was not saying everybody was me. It was saying I was everybody. That, you know, every one of them, it could have been any one of us. And so you were representative of so many people. And when I came out of the courtroom, which no one expected, I mean, people were round the back ready to turn. Someone said to me, we're going to overturn that truck when they put you in it to take you to prison. I'm like, no, because I'll be in the truck. Don't tip the truck while I'm in the truck. So getting them to stop. But as it was, I walked out the front door. The roar was overwhelming. But you're to the point where it was almost too much for one person's body. So someone lifted me up, and I remember thinking, I'm a sieve. It's the only way I can take this is to let it through and out. You know, in my head, I was just like, couldn't take it. But it was just brilliant. But it made me resolve that to fight at some point when I had time, the law and the justice system. Because to me, you know, the use of these treaties, the use of the law against us, our inability to access justice because we don't have the money, the time, or the expertise is a huge injustice in our world. So now I'm working with the Zero Hour, who I think Kate is here from there. And that's to bring in something called the Climate and Ecology Bill. Now, if this bill was to pass, it's currently got cross-party support, 150 MPs and peers, loads of different organizations have allied with it. And it's had, it was introduced by Caroline Lucas in 2020, had a reading in the House of Lords by Lord Reedsdale for the Lib Dems. It's back in the House of Lords on May 10th from Labour. And what would happen is, if this became law, if a fracking application landed on a desk, it would instantly have to be rejected because it would break the law. Because the laws, it would state that we must meet our climate and environment, you know, our climate and ecology commitments that we've legally committed to. So, I mean, there should be enough in place, but there isn't. I'll let Ladybug speak. Ladybug, feel free to unmute. Yeah.
I think it's such a beautiful, you know, prospect of something that could come to like really, really protect us. But what kind of, yeah, I know I'm just going to come out straight out there and say it. There's already some laws that suggest our government should protect us and shouldn't go over certain like legal limits of air pollution and etc. etc. And we know that, you know, they're actually already breaking those. Why do you think this one's going to be any different?
I think because there's a lot
quite a sharp question.
But no, it's a good question, and it's the one I asked as well, because I'm like, well, isn't there already this stuff in place? Good question. And the point is that what you're referring to is the Climate Change Act 2008, which is supposed to protect us and supposed to stop all these things. But apart from the fact that our regulators seem to be made of frigging nothing but feathers, the Climate Change Act of 2008 actually didn't include shipping, aviation, the fact that a lot of the goods we buy in are made in other countries, and they therefore are taking that environmental hit for us, but we're not accepting that we're trashing other countries. So we say China and India are really bad. Well, they wouldn't be really bad if we didn't order all our goods from them to be produced there and make all that waste. So within there's ways around it, is what I'm saying, is there were so many loopholes in that to get out of being blamed that it's pointless, and it is not up to date. This is much more watertight. It's actually split almost into climate and ecology. So there's not just protect nature, which is too weak in the Climate Change Act. It's to protect and restore, and then to put the safeguards in place. Of course, like any law, The problem is you need someone to enforce it. And that's where we come a little bit unstuck, I will admit, because we have this government. But I get a sense of change, because certainly it won't be a Tory government, I don't believe, next time. And I think won't be a majority government for Labour either. I think it'll have to come in with support from others. And I don't know how it plays out, but what I do know is that the Climate and Ecology Bill is a more solid legal document than any other document we already have. And it covers the things that really matter, because there was so much left out of that Climate Change Act. And it was done deliberately because they knew they would be able to get out of things later. So to me, and also, I suppose, once it's in place as a law, then we have a giant stick to beat them with, to hopefully be able to get together and maybe get, places like Good Law Project to take our government to court, because we'd have a stronger footing to stand on. But to me, the whole reason for it is, it's like my granddaughter's just turned 18 recently. And she used to come, remember Felix, when she was 6, she used to come to Occupy, like after we'd vacated.
Yeah.
I used to bring her down on a Sunday for the Sunday meeting. She learned all the hand signals, and she stayed involved with that. And then with me in the anti-fracking until she was about 13. And then she met boys. And now, then I lost her for a while. And now she's 18, she's come back. But I'd look at her and I think, wow, I missed all those years, where I should have been with my grandchild, enjoying her company and nourishing her. I know I set a good example and she's proud, but I missed all those years. And to me, it should not be down to me or you or our young people to have to stand in front of trucks to face police brutality and to ruin what could be their chances of a good job or anything in the future, because the government is doing wrong. So we need to hold the government to account. I was talking to Phoenix about this the other day, that in all honesty, and I have to confess, I was not remotely environmental. I went to Occupy because I wanted to change the system of government, because it was clearly undemocratic. It was taking money from the poor. It wasn't giving an adequate amount to people on disability and so on. And yet we were bailing out banks. To me, that was just an obscene abuse. And that wasn't democracy. So that's what I went for. I mean, if I hadn't come home and found the leaflet, I wouldn't have probably gone and engaged as deeply as I did with Peter Coville on the environmental group within Occupy.
Never doubt what a leaflet can do to bring people in. As a leaflet network from the 90s, before all the internet stuff. Just go, you can go and talk to anyone with a leaflet, and the people that have got involved. It's really critically important what you're saying is system change. We in activism so often are reacting to hacking at the tentacles of the octopus and trying to stop the destruction that's happening. But we have to also put energy into the futures and the worlds we want to see, the solutions, but also the system change. It's a word that's bandied about in our movement for a number of years, system change. But what I'm trying to get people down to is, what does system change actually look like? How do we change the political system, the economic system, the environmental system? And unless we've got laws that protect Mother Nature and Earth and things, then we're continually going to be up against these corporations that have got 5-year profit, 10-year profit margins to fill. We have to change the landscape and the system. And this is one way.
Sadly,
how can we help with the CE bill? How is it getting on? How many are supporting, and how can we actually make it happen?
Certainly when it comes back to the Commons on May 10th, there'll be a huge amount of noise about that. It's the little things that people don't always feel is activism. It literally is signing the United for Nature petition. It's writing to your MP. It's holding your councillor to account. It's like we've got councils to sign up and say, we support the Climate and Ecology Bill. And, for a lot of people, even Tories, we've just had an MP, Derek Thomas from St Ives, stand up and be counted. It's not a Tory position, but he believes in it. We worked hard on him. And I'm currently working cross-party. And I think it's really important that we do that, because every one of us needs to breathe and drink water. And none of us is going to be able to do any of those things and survive. So I would never care who a person is, what their campaign is, or whose side they think they're on. As far as I'm concerned, everyone needs this information. Everyone needs to be better informed and not misled and misguided. And everyone needs to be able to have a way to fight back and be heard. And for a lot of people, petitions is where you start. Then you move on to harassing your MP and your councillor. And the next thing you find yourself in front of a truck saying, stop, you will not pass, you know. And but, you know, that's just the way it is. Yeah. I'm just looking, there's a whole heap of things coming through on the chat. I haven't even looked at them. Find your local campaign and enjoy it. Good advice, Kate. Kate Henley volunteers with 0 Hour, which is the campaign group, which Felix has kindly linked behind the Climate and Ecology Bill. So it's a group of people, scientists and, you know, legal people, digital people, who have got together to try and propel this bill and support it as it takes its journey through Parliament. And I'm really hopeful for it, because right now, you know, like we've seen, I don't know if you've seen in the last few days, what the Tories have been doing with the local elections coming up. They've changed most of their leaflets to green, and a lot of them have removed the word conservative from their bios on Twitter and all sorts. And it was Carol Vorderman who raised this on Twitter. And Twitter's like since then just gone crazy with it. And you know that the Tories need to steal some green credentials, because, you know, it's getting to the point where there's no denying it. Look at our waterways, our sewage, you know, the mess of it. And like for us here in Blackpool, not only are we one of the poorest places in the country, the one thing we do rely on to bring income is now trashed. You know, who wants to go in the sea? It's vile, you know? So, yeah, so hassling the people who represent you is important, because they need to be standing up for your town and your health and your well-being as well. I'll pause for a minute and take a sip of coffee because I talk a lot.
That's cool. So if there's any questions around the or feedback around the University Challenge panel, if anyone wants to weigh in or share anything there. Lovely to see Mary Ellen. So I recognise half your face first of all. Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, Mary Ellen, hello.
Oh,
It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you. So lovely.
I haven't caught up with your message yet, but I was going to invite you to become an honorary nana, wasn't I, and get you a tabard.
Oh, I would absolutely love that.
That would be fantastic. You're going to be in London on the 21st.
Yes, I had a message from Greenpeace today. They'd like me to speak.
Fantastic. Well, I'll find you and I'll bring you a tabard.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
And I'll be with Deepak, and Deepak will be outside the DWP.
Yes, yes. I think that I was talking to a group of women last night from different campaigns, you know, about, you know, people who are with Deepak, as well as carers and people like that.
Yeah.
And we talked about, you know, where we were going to position ourselves and what we were going to do. And people were talking about DWP. Yeah.
I was hoping to be at that meeting, but completely missed it.
Oh, it was fabulous, but it was okay that you missed
it. Yeah. I'll join you at the next one.
Yeah. I think there's also a cause, you know, like talking about all this stuff, is that a lot of it's negative and sad and upsetting. But when you look at the solutions, and I always think of it as a bit like, you know, the industries, they have their foot on the hose pipe, you know, and backing up is this big bubble of incredible solutions that will happen fast and furious and make such a change. Because when our homes are insulated, our bills are lowered. We've got extra money. That extra money gives our kids healthier food. It gives us less mental strain. And when our public transport is, you know, no longer polluting.
It's free.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think Green Party put out they wanted £1 buses for everyone. But yeah, it should be. We need to encourage people away from cars. And the only way to do that is to make it very low.
We really need to be focused on the solutions. I've particularly been pushing this Copenhagen Climate Summit. You know, look at Germany. They brought in whatever it was, €9 cost trains to anywhere in Germany. Suddenly their road transport and pollution levels dropped by 25%. You know, if you want to get from one part of London, you know, one part of the UK to another, it's 60, 70, 80, 90, 120 quid before you've breathed to move between London and Manchester, Birmingham.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's cheaper to fly, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Crazy. There was a film made, a documentary, and it was called 2040, I think it's called. It's really worth finding, an Australian documentary. And I don't know, has anyone here heard of the Lucas Plan? I'm not sure if you have. Okay, so back in the 70s, there was a group of aerospace workers working at British Aerospace. And their jobs were at risk. There wasn't enough war going on. And on top of that, they were really a bit sick of making things that killed people. And so the workers got together, and this was throughout BAE Systems, throughout the UK, and they worked together on a plan called the Lucas Plan, and it assessed all of their skills, all of their machinery, and all of their abilities. And it came up with a plan that without changing very much at all, they could instantly go from making weapons and plane parts to making wind turbines, incubators, and a whole host of things that would require very little training and very little adaptation of machinery and would take them into profit. And this was it was so acclaimed, this plan. Well, costed everything. It was thorough. And the people behind it, the men, the shop stewards, they're incredible. It's worth looking that one up as well, Lucas Plan. So they put it to the government. The government obviously said no because it was a very good idea. So the government said no. We went back to making bombs and planes. But this 2040 documentary I'm talking about, the Australian group behind that did a world audit. So they looked at, if you just stopped gas and oil tomorrow, you just stopped it, what the hell would happen? And you know what? They found that even with only what we have now, with no new innovation, that we can not only survive, we would thrive, and that things would improve. You know, and everyone's got that, well, you're taking us back to the Stone Age. No, we're not. We're retraining workers for jobs that will last a lifetime, for as long as the wind and the sun are still there.
Green transition. Millions of jobs available if we just reskilled in the green renewable energy, all the, you know, air ground source, air source, heat pumps, all the different things we could be making. Yeah. And, you know, retooling. Our economy is based a lot on war and oil. And, you know, we can be renewing, you know, all sorts of jobs for a just transition. That means that, you know, groups in unions and various groups do find jobs in a green economy. Like you say, the Green New Deal. So the solutions are there. We just need the political and the physical spaces and a bit of funding to make these things going. So that's why we're trying to do the network, physical spaces. Over.
Yeah, the unions got together as well with some of the climate change groups a few years ago and produced a document called A Million Climate Jobs.
Yeah, they brought out another one this year.
Oh, excellent.
They've updated it.
Oh, brilliant, because it's so brilliant. Helen,
yeah,
why are you contagious?
Oh, I'm just coming out of having COVID.
I was reading it as contentious.
I'm down to a little line now.
I thought it said contentious, and I was just busy admiring the balls you had for saying I'm a contentious woman, but no, you're contagious. Okay. Yeah, so I think there's every reason to be positive, and the only reason not to be is the system again. You know, it's like we've got all of the solutions, the hose pipes backed up with all this good stuff, and yet here we are still stuck in the past. And you wonder what's the breaking point. And I think that it's all the key is really to weave ourselves together, you know, to support each other, to not worry whose banner you stand under, and to, you know, make sure you turn up at a picket line and support a union worker, even if you're a climate activist, because the unions will turn up and support you, you know. And we need to be a whole lot kinder to each other and ourselves. And you see it being torn apart. But I think a lot of the times that, you know, like with XR and JSO and so on, I think people are sent to divide us. They're sent in to muddy the waters and make a mess. You know, I've just put in my first subject access request information about me from the police because I had a cause to see a cop the other day, and he said, "Oh, I see we've got a thug in." And I thought, wow, I've actually managed to escape without a record, and I'm not a thug. How dare you? How dare you, even in a throwaway, laughable comment, stick that on me? To me, I'm a really, really worried grandma. That's my job. It is my job to worry as a grandma, to run ahead of my grandchild, fill the holes in and make sure there's a clear path. And at the moment there isn't. So I'm running to deal with a climate emergency because I need her to be able to breathe. But at the same time, I wish I didn't have to, so I could get on with finding democracy and justice and law that will work for us. So the Climate and Ecology Bill is my first step. And the reason as well behind it is I want to learn how that process works. How does, you know, it's all education, isn't it? There's so much you have to learn along the way that you didn't ever know and didn't expect to have to know. So I want to know, how does a law get passed? How do we get it in there? How do we get a regulator and make them face it up? At the moment, the Environmental Agency, when we called them during fracking and we said, will you be coming down to check the safety of the site? Oh, like, no, we've only got 3 staff and we've had a budget cut by 15% and our staffing cut by 15%. We can't possibly get there. And this is when there was one well. The government wanted thousands of wells. How the hell would the regulators be able to check and regulate? Hi, Helen.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was listening, I don't know if anyone's listened to a podcast, it's American, it's Breaking Down Collapse. And the last one I was listening to, they were saying in America, and I imagine it's the same here, if 100% of the population want a law to pass, there's a 30% chance it'll pass.
Wow.
And if 100% of the population are against a law, there is a 30% chance it'll pass. In other words, all the petitions, all the demands, all the whatever, they do what they like.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if there's anything sort of similar being looked at here.
Yeah. To look at the percentages. But that's a really good question. I'm going to look at the podcast, and I've just written that down, Helen. I'm going to look into that. Like, what percentage of laws that are wanted pass? Yeah. But I think, But it's still, what is it, the thing they call it? Little nudges, isn't it? So, I'm sorry, Felix, you wanted to speak.
Well, it's kind of along the subject, understanding how laws are passed, understanding our political system. It's a mystery to a lot of people. We vote once every 5 years, but, how do we apply pressure so that it actually works? I mean, only, we occupied Parliament Square against the illegal wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We were outside, and I've been to years of demonstrations outside with tens of thousands of people waving placards outside for a day. And only so many years ago, 6-7 years ago, I realised you can actually go into Parliament. I think there was one big law they were trying to change, and we went in and some people explained how the system worked, and or some of the system. And you can go into Parliament most days and it's open. You can go in, you can do something called a green card, your MP, your local MP. You can tell him, hi, I'm from Lancashire, I'm from Birmingham, I want to see you. And sometimes they'll come down and see you and talk to you. And how do we work out how our system works? How do we change our system? How do we apply pressure at the points that's really going to change things with the system that we have? Proportional representation, other things we need to get in. Our system is totally skewed and is manipulated and is very weighted in certain ways. They're making it more difficult for younger people to vote. There's boundary changes and things, but we have to work with this system that we've got to change it and create the new systems we want. But understanding how those laws pass and getting involved more, how do we do this and change systems better? Over to Kate, then Mary Ellen. Kate in sunny Henley, University Challenge panel.
Sorry, guys, I'm trying to work my phone. Yeah, just I thought it was just worth saying in relation to, sorry, I didn't see the lady's name, was it Helen, about this thing about 100%, if 100% of people want a law to pass, then whatever. It's just worth pointing out that the people who started the 0 Hour campaign are the same group of people who were behind the Climate Change Act 2008. So the Climate Change Act 2008 was sort of grew out of an initiative which involved a couple of sort of key individuals and the Big Ask campaign, and it evolved into the Climate Change Act 2008. So the campaign does have a track history of getting legislation through. Now, it doesn't necessarily pass in the same form. I think what happened with the Climate Change Act was that it took sort of the fundamental principles of what these people were trying to put forward, and it evolved into the Climate Change Act. But it does have a track history of getting legislation through, albeit in a different form. So that was the first thing. In relation to what Phoenix was just saying about how you change the system, how does that change happen? I think a really key part of that is people's assemblies and citizens' assemblies. because it's so crucial to involve everybody, isn't it? So having a one-off citizens assembly is a key pillar of the Climate and Ecology Bill, because it's so critical to get long-term thinking into the debate in Parliament.
Yeah.
So we need to get the recommendations of the Citizens Assembly in front of Parliament. But I think, coming back to what I was just making a few comments on the chat, that's why it's so important that we do engage with the Conservatives as well. And I understand completely that, like, I'm sure everybody on this call doesn't think very highly of Conservatives. And, you know, certainly the track record, you know, over the past however many years we can remember is pretty awful. But I do know from campaigning in Henley that there are some really good Conservatives around. I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about just local people. There's a guy here in Henley who we've been working really closely with. He's the managing partner of one of the big law firms in Henley, and he has been absolutely phenomenal. He's met up with the MP with us. He's like really worked with us behind the scenes. He's really, really worried about what's happening, and the reason why he still remains a member of the Conservative Party is so, you know, because he thinks that if all good people like him fell away from the party, then it just makes the situation worse. So I am very concerned about the polarisation, as I'm sure everybody is, you know, that's happening in society. You know, we can't go into that thing of saying that all Conservatives are evil, because it's just really like, and this is like a fundamental part of the bill, which I think Tina mentioned, which is that it is cross-party, and that involves listening to people's assemblies. We're trying to run more people's assemblies in Henley to get the whole community engaged, because that's also part of public engagement. So yeah, that was my bit.
That was really useful, Kate. Thank you. Mary Ellen, I think, is next.
I was just responding to what Phoenix said about how do we get people to be that change, and Parliament and MPs and things. And I think it's a really important point that we actually need to look at changing ourselves before we can change them. And part of that change is getting everyone to understand the inherent power within them to be that change, to realize that they work for you, that we pay their wages. And when you pay someone's wages, you are their boss. So every one of us is actually the boss of the Prime Minister. And in realizing that, then we can stand in our power and take back that power that we have relinquished to them, thinking that that's what democracy is, thinking that and accepting the myth that we have that we're powerless, that they have the power, and that we have to appeal to them to do something. And it's not that. They have to understand that they should not be keeping an eye on us, that you shouldn't have to ask the police for your record. We need to be able to ask for the records on them.
Yeah.
Well, we need to hold them to account, but we can't hold them to account if we don't understand our power to do so, and our right and our obligation and duty to do so. So when they do something wrong, it's not them doing something wrong, it's us not holding them to account and stopping them. And once we know that power, and you understand that, Phoenix understands that, and a growing number of people, especially young people, are really getting to understand that this is our future. We cannot just be silent. We can't just leave it to them.
I love what Sandra's just said in the comments, which is, whoever you're with, you need to find common ground as a starting point. And I have a trick for doing that. So you're going to try this trick, right? So you meet someone. I ran against George Osborne in an election in 2015. I knew I was going to win, obviously, but it was just the opportunity to be on a panel with the man who was promoting fracking. And so I ran. But now I have a theory that I can look anyone in the eye, and no matter how much I dislike you, I know you were a baby once, and I really love babies. So to me, I would have loved every human on earth for a period of time. And then what happened was life wrote its shitty story over some people. They were in the wrong place. They're getting the wrong information. They were surrounded by people who wanted to proliferate a way of being. You know, it's the peers. And it's so hard because you can listen to someone like Lee Anderson, the Tory, said something the other day, like, but most people think like me. And most people think like them. but we don't. And so the looking into someone's eyes and knowing that you all started life with that same first breath, that first heartbeat, and it's just that there was a different story between then and now. I will say, though, that I completely failed with George Osborne to have that. I looked into his eyes, I found the darkest, most tragic space, and I could feel very little empathy. I just think he had a really bad existence.
It really is about seeing, you know, the light inside everyone, whatever culture, creed, you know, or political party they are. Recently, I've done a lot of work last 2 months finding a big building for the April, the big one, and one of the many buildings we went to and talked to. I had to talk with a lot of very connected property and some who were quite senior in Conservative Party, and we talked about there's a group that's coming to the big one called Compass Online, about bringing getting all the political parties, you know, Green, Liberal, Conservative, and Labour, to all talk to each other about what we're going to do about community and the environment and changing the system and stuff. And, you know, as a rainbow warrior, to me, all these centres for years are about bringing people together from every walk of life to cooperate on the environment. Nature knows no boundaries. All of our grandchildren will be affected by these floods, tornadoes, and changes in the climate, and we have to start building our resilient communities now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been absolutely fascinating. I think we need to just go around the screen and say sort of parting comments, feedback, or a little bit from Tina before we go to there. I
think Helen should read her comment out loud. It's just made me laugh lots.
And so just to say, we'll come over to Ellen and set for that comment, and Tina, and then round the screen. Just to say, you know, this was very much about the learnings from the successful anti-fracking campaign. And for many, many campaigns over many years, you're right in the middle of it and you don't know whether you're going to win at the end or not. And you're doing the best you can with too few, trying to do too much for too long. And then sometimes you win. But looking back and learning from all these campaigns, you know, from the suffragettes to, you know, all different sorts of the unions that got us weekends and sick pay, you know, the levelers and the diggers, you know, up to kind of, you know, Greenham Common, and then removing nuclear weapons from the country at that point, or whatever, or nuclear from the base. You know, there's been so many victories that we have had, and we need to look back and treasure those and learn from those and say, you know, the road protests, we after many years of setting up camps, they cut from 26 billion down to 8 billion. We saved 2/3 of beautiful sites of scientific nature and woods. And yet they said to us sometimes, you've lost, you've been evicted, you lost. We won in the long term. And, you know, many groups and many campaigns over years do win. So without too much further ado, back over to Tina for a parting, whatever you want to say. And then we'll go around the screen for feedback or any other final comments. Over.
I'm just saying I can't stop now because I'm now picturing baby Boris and baby Rees-Mogg, and it's all getting too much, and I may have gone too far with my analogy. So yeah, just to say thank you. I love rooms like this where it's a few of us. I feel relaxed and I can be me. You know, I'm not presenting to a room full of professional anything. So it's just us. And I think we are so all alike. And I love the idea, Phoenix, of places where we're trying to bring together different political parties and to try and not let anyone fall through the net, even the Rees-Moggs and the George Osbornes. You know, all of these people at some point will be gasping for air with the rest of us, you know, and just to have that shared knowledge and understanding of that. I think the sewage has made a big difference. I think a lot of people woke up when they saw that even if they weren't looking at anything else, you know, the fact that there's a great deal of poo in our water makes people pay attention, you know, and to realize we really are all in this, you know, stream of shit together, and we're going to have to find some way out. But yeah, so thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all being so lovely and so welcoming and so nice. Yeah,
beautiful.
I think Mary Ellen and Helen both had comments.
Mary Ellen, Helen, and then round the screen for parting comments. Over.
Yeah, just what you were saying about the things about all these secret private courts. Do you remember Kit Bennett from it was in the Kirby Misberton lot? He's in Global Justice now, and they're doing a talk next Thursday going around all the solicitors in Leeds that represent, you know, like Shell against Nigeria or whatever, that are doing all these ISDSs. So it's so difficult.
Send me the link.
Yeah, it's so difficult to explain that to people what it is. Yeah,
I know what you mean, because there was that announcement. And there was an announcement, wasn't there, that they were going to, that some lawyers and barristers got together through Garden Court Chambers, and they put out an announcement that they're not going to represent these companies, and that they are going to represent activists for free. And it's an argumented point, because there's a thing called a taxi rank system for barristers, where you have to take what you're given no matter what. But they're now fighting back against that, and that will be really interesting to see how that pans out. I was at Queen Mary University on Friday to talk at a criminology lecture, and they wanted activists to say what it was like for us, and that was inspiring. That was all these really clever people who deal with criminology and lawyers and things supporting us and wanting to hear from us, and that meant the world. Yeah.
Mary Ellen?
I was going to say, just a little comeback on that. Our Climate Emergency Centre, when they were looking for a lawyer, they were going to use Pinsent Masons because they are environmental lawyers. And I went, don't you bloody dare, they're the ones that set up the injunctions for the fracking sites. So even people in this area don't know what's happening. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Zip.
Beautiful. Mary Ellen?
I just wanted to say that in the end, it all comes down to love. And I think all the wins we've had is because of the love that's driven us to do what we do individually and collectively, and love for our families, for our grandchildren, for our planet, for other species. And love is the language, the universal language. We can speak to anybody across the world and they understand love, and not just anybody, but any species. I love that there's a woman who sits at the bottom of the ocean and the shark queue up for cuddles. Love is the thing that connects us. Love is the thing that's going to save us. And we need to remember that all these people who are looking to be the next billionaire, the next trillionaire, and all the division and hate they have, comes from a place where their love has been removed. We need to get back to their hearts. We need to help them to reach back into their hearts.
Beautiful. As always, Mary Ellen, you're one of my gurus. We'd love to have you to come and do your own Wednesday night talk, but I'll talk to you that separately another point. Come along and present to the network. Who should we go round to next for parting comments? Henry and Hackney?
Yeah, thanks very much. That was really inspiring. It's nice to have some wisdom handed down from the generation above. My kids are sort of teenage years, so and they've also been protesting with me when they're about 8 years old, but I think they were just being mini me. Thank you.
Over to Dom in Edinburgh, is it? I think Dom.
Right, thank you. Really inspirational. I'm not quite sure how I ended up at this meeting or who this group is, but I saw you meet every Wednesday at the same time, so that's yep. Cool. I've been on the Zero Hour website, and I've noticed by filtering on Scotland that nearly all of the Scottish people who support the bill are SNP, but the SNP don't actually support it yet. So that's a job for me to do. And I noticed there's only one council in the whole of Scotland that supports it. So there's another one.
Oh, that's amazing, Dom. What an incredible outcome. Thank you.
I can't promise anything. I'm a bit stretched.
No. But you know what? Earlier on, I said you have to celebrate every win, and like when we were talking about winning and losing. And to me, literally, every time someone walked up the hill who I hadn't seen before, it was a winning day. Every time I saw like one of our older ladies who'd never protested in her life suddenly get up from a chair being an observer to actually stop a truck with her body, that was a win. When people do stuff, and they do stuff because they give a damn about the same stuff, that's winning. And so yeah, every single one of those little acts matters. Thank you.
Beautiful. Over to Martin in Hull. I have to unmute Martin. Just parting comment, unmute.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I think it's just to compare with my experience. I live in England, so I can catch up very easily. But you guys, you are very highly skilled in the way that you are protecting the earth. because yeah, of course, there's an industrial city, industrial country, and I'm trying to compare with what is happening in Africa. Why is obsolete chaos with the environment almost getting degraded by the factors of climate change?
Yeah.
So
and Namibia is just getting fracking for the first time in Namibia, because I work with a campaign there. And you've never had fracking there. Now they're going to do it in the Okawanga Delta. It's such a precious place.
Yeah, for me, I'll be attending every Wednesday. I want to be part of this team and get to know you better, what you do, and also I may have a chance also to talk about my experiences elsewhere and what I'm doing.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, I run the carnival in Hull.
In Hull, the Carnival Collective, yes. And let's chat on another point further about helping and supporting. You were mentioning about projects in Kenya and how we can all link up and help. Definitely, let's keep that conversation going, Martin. Yes, please.
No, that is very important. So I'll get on the group and so that we can keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Coming over bioregionally close-ish to Tim and Lincoln. Tim, parting comment?
Yeah, that was great to listen to. I could listen to you all night, Tina, if you just carry on talking. You know, it's just great words. Yeah, so engaging. I mean, it was
Most
great
people
to
have
catch
an
up with
opposing view to that, but go ahead.
Climate and Ecological Bill. Yeah, I mean, we were seeing it all over the place at one time, weren't we? No, we're not. We did back last year. We tried to get our district council to become a supporter. We lobbied a lot of councillors. We weren't successful, but obviously we raised the issue with them, and they are pretty good council with their climate action plan. So they're doing a lot of good stuff, but they couldn't get them to become a supporter. So we did try there. And the other thing, just to you made me smile when you talk about dancing. I recall, not sure everybody else was there. XR protest we did up in the open cast coal mine up near Durham just before lockdown.
I was there.
And I mean, I think it was, were you there? Yeah, we danced Jabba in the middle of that coal mine. It was a surreal situation, wasn't it? But it was amazing. It was fantastic. Yeah. So
it's surprising, isn't it, though, Tim? The things you find yourself doing as a grown-up. I should have started so much earlier, you know. Yeah.
Never too late for a happy childhood. Over to Sandra in Direct Action Keeps You Young. Over to Sandra in Morecambe, Lancashire team. Over.
Yeah, very inspiring. Lovely to see everybody. Yeah, and Lancaster City Council, they support the Climate and Ecological Bill. We all went to a meeting with our banners, and there was only one Conservative who said he didn't support it. And I think then he was so embarrassed that he actually changed his mind. So, yeah, and it's really important to hang on to the wins, because I was in court last week and I'm in court next week and down in London for sitting in the road and refusing to move. And it was really handy when I got convicted to be able to tag on, when I was messaging sort of family and friends who said, let them know, I tagged on the fact that over 100 lawyers and KCs had refused. They said that they were breaking all the judiciary system by refusing to imprison peaceful protesters, and saying that they wouldn't act for the fossil fuel industry. And they're obviously getting a real bollocking. But that was really heartening to me as I got sort of my first conviction, and I've got another one coming up. And yeah, so you have to cling on to hang on to the moves and hang on to the community, yeah, because you need the
support. Thanks for going through that, Sandra. I mean, it's a lot to go through, and it takes so much of your time and energy. You must be so exhausted and drained with this, but really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers. I don't know who's not been. Oh, Ines
in Oxford.
Yeah, just to say thank you for it again to Tina, to everyone. And I really, really hope to see you all next week. No, it's not next week, in about 10 days in London. the 4 days, whatever pickets you go to, etc. And to Martin, one of the pickets is in front of Treasury, and the groups that are going there are focusing on debt and climate, and I'll be there. So we are just now organized something. Please come to that, because international solidarity is fundamental, and there is nothing to some extent that compares the fact that not only what we have done to our children, but what we have done to other countries. And so I really encourage you to come, and I look forward to seeing you in London.
And I'd add to that because we do still have some freedom left, they don't shoot us or put us in prison forever. That then we are the voice of the rest of the world, and we are responsible for those overseas emissions. And this is all on us. We really have to be 10 times as loud because of that. Or we become that, don't we? Yeah.
So see you all in London. Thank you so much.
See you in London on the streets, reclaim the streets. Coming over to Ladybug in Northampton, and then Adam in sunny Colchester. Over, Ladybug.
I'm not so good with just general checkouts. I'm better if you give me a question. But I loved all the stuff that Mary Ellen was sharing. It's always really good to see you. You're such a guru, and I put a link in the chat to work that reconnects, which is really, really beautiful.
That looks really interesting. I clicked that. What's it about?
So it's been around for way, way, way longer than I have. I'm nearly 27, and it's been helping particularly climate activists for that whole entire time. And it's kind of it's therapeutic, but it's non-therapeutic. People that go find it therapeutic, but it's not medical therapeutic, if you know what I mean. And there's a network on there, and if you want people to do stuff in your spaces and facilitate things, and what Marilyn was saying about connecting with why we're actually doing this, and our love for the planet, it's a lot. I'm not sponsored, but it just made me feel like I had to share it in there.
Very grateful. I'm going to spend the evening on that.
Nice.
It's really cool. I'll pass to whoever's next, and it'll be good to see everybody next week, perhaps.
Yep, we're on next week for a general advice and support session. Groups come in from around the country, tell us how they're getting on in their teams to get buildings or updates from their centres. Older groups help newer groups. Over to Adam.
Yeah, thanks. It's really difficult to follow all those magical words and the presentation, Tina. Thanks. I took loads of notes actually because I'm geeky and I like to share your wealth with others. But the key words that jumped out, obviously, love, defiance, wins, solutions. Unfortunately, baby George Osborne. I'm going to have trouble getting that out of my head. Then,
it's got a haunt, isn't it?
Yeah, then the one that is haunting. Then the one that sort of helped erode half of that was Dancing in a Coal Mine. Love that. And it made me suddenly envision and wish there was a XR brass band. We've got an XR samba band working out in our climate practicing for the 21st, but an XR brass band would be amazing.
That would be so amazing. I love brass band music.
Okay, so on that note, samba band is brilliant for moving the crowd around and taking action. But there's a guy, Chris Tofu. I've got him to come and play at a few previous rebellions. He does something called Brass Off, and they do a great night in Rich Mix in Hackney with 3 or 4 brass bands all competing against each other. I'll ask him, see if he can pull something in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and give us an hour and 15 minutes or so of your precious time. Really inspiring. Remember that direct action gets results. Remember that a lot of our rights have come from brave people like yourselves standing up and taking action and making a difference. And, over many, many generations, we have changed things by taking action. And you can't always see it when you're right in the middle of it, but we are creating a massive wave of change. Hope to see you on the streets a bit later in April. Tina, thank you so much for coming. Big up.
I feel full of happiness now. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Same link.
Good luck all.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Take care. Just leave the chat.
Tina, before you go.
Yes. let me just stop recording 1 second. Let me just, oh, where's the recording on? I have to make it big. I have to make it big. And then I can stop the recording. Stop. Okay, thank you very much. Take care.